I used to think gas stations were boring. Just rows of flickering lights, humming refrigerators, and the occasional trucker stopping for coffee. But that was before I started working nights, before I realized some places aren't meant to stay open after dark. It was supposed to be an easy job. Night shift at a gas station, my buddy had said. You sit behind the counter, drink free coffee, maybe mop the floor once in a while. That's it. Easy money. And for the first few nights, he was right. I read old magazines, scrolled through my phone, watched the cameras blink lazily from their screens. But then the truck came, and after that night, I never looked at the place the same way again. The gas station sat on the edge of Highway 46, miles away from any real town. Just a stop in the middle of nowhere, 2 pumps, a small convenience store, and a parking lot that always felt too empty. The nights were long, the kind of long where the ticking of the clock feels like someone knocking inside your head. The overhead lights buzzed constantly. Moths smacked against the glass. The air smelled faintly of gasoline, coffee, and old floor wax. Inside it was just me, alone. Or at least that's what I told myself. It was around 2 a.m. when I noticed the first thing. One of the pumps turned on. The screen lit up. The numbers rolled. But no one was there. I squinted through the window, pressing my face to the glass. The lot was empty. No car, no truck, nothing. Still, the pump clicked as if a nozzle had been lifted. Gasoline hissed through the line. I grabbed the intercom and muttered, "Hello? Pump 3 isn't working right. If someone's out there, I need you to come inside." No response. The pump stopped. The screen reset to 0. I told myself it was a glitch. Machines do weird things all the time, but then I checked the cameras, and that's when I saw it. A figure, standing by the pump, tall, hunched, with its head tilted at an angle too sharp to be natural. And then, before I could blink, it was gone. Half an hour later, the silver truck pulled in. I'll never forget the way it looked. Old, but polished, chrome shining under the buzzing lights, the kind of truck that didn't belong to anyone from around here. It rolled to a stop by the far pump. The driver didn't get out. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. The door finally opened. A man stepped out, if you could call him that. He was tall but too thin, his clothes hanging loose like they were borrowed. His face stayed in shadow, the brim of his cap pulled low. He didn't look at me, didn't look at the pumps. He just stood there, head tilted, the same way as the figure I'd seen on the camera. Then without a sound, he slid the nozzle into his tank. I couldn't breathe. Eventually he walked toward the store, slow, deliberate, like he knew I was watching and wanted me to wait. The bell above the door jingled when he stepped in, but it didn't sound right. The chime stretched too long, like the metal coil had been pulled until it screamed. He moved down the aisles, but his feet made no noise on the tiles. I tried to say, "Good evening, sir," but my voice cracked. He stopped in front of the refrigerators, just stood there, staring at the glass, and the hum of the cooler grew louder. Louder, until it drowned everything else out. Then he turned and smiled. But it wasn't a smile. It was too wide, too stretched, teeth too long. "Coffee," he whispered. I nodded quickly. Yeah, of course." I poured him a cup with shaking hands, spilling half of it. When I turned back, he was gone. The door hadn't opened. The bell hadn't rung. But the lot was empty again, and the truck? Gone. I almost quit, but the paycheck was too good, and part of me wanted to believe I'd imagined it. Just sleep deprivation, maybe. That's what I told myself. The next night, I brought a thermos of strong coffee and a baseball bat, just in case. For the first half of the shift, everything was normal. But then at 1:46 a.m., the lights in the parking lot flickered, and I heard it again. The pump clicking on I froze. The screen rolled. Gasoline hissed, and then headlights. The silver truck eased into the lot. Same pump, same soundless driver. But this time he wasn't alone. I didn't notice her at first. The woman in the passenger seat, her face pressed against the glass. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. I stumbled back from the window, my stomach turning cold. The man filled his tank, moving like a shadow. Then he looked straight at me. Even from across the lot, I felt it. Like ice water poured down my spine, he tipped his cap. And then he drove away, but the cameras showed something different. They showed the truck still sitting there. Not moving, not leaving, and the woman, she was still screaming. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the phone and dialed my manager. "Someone's messing with me," I whispered. "You need to send help. Call the cops, something." But the line cut, not just static. A voice, "Stay, low, mechanical." Not from this world, thought I dropped the phone. And then the bell above the door rang. He was inside. The man from the truck. But this time he wasn't pretending to be human. His neck hung too long. His arms stretched until his fingertips scraped the floor. And his smile, God, that smile, reached past his ears. Behind him, the glass door showed nothing. No pumps, no parking lot, just black, like the world outside had been erased. He spoke again, voice rattling like broken machinery. "You shouldn't be here." I stumbled back, clutching the bat. "What do you want?" He tilted his head, smile widening. "We don't want. We take." And then, he wasn't alone. Shapes filled the aisles. Tall, thin, wrong. Some wore uniforms. Some looked like travelers. But their faces were stretched into the same impossible grin, and I recognized them. The faces from the missing posters taped to the bulletin board by the door. All the people who'd vanished along Highway 46. They surrounded me, filling the store with the sound of grinding metal and buzzing lights. The man leaned close, his breath cold against my ear. "You belong to the station now." And then, darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was behind the counter again. Morning light seeped through the windows. Cars passed by outside. Everything looked normal. But when customers came in, they didn't look at me. They looked through me like I wasn't there at all, and on the camera feed I saw it. The truck, still parked by the pump. The driver smiling at the lens. And in the passenger seat, me. So if you're ever driving down Highway 46 and you see a little gas station with flickering lights, don't stop, because it isn't a gas station anymore, it's a trap. And if you step inside, you won't leave. Not really. You'll just become another shadow. Another face behind the glass. Another part of the longest night. I used to work night shifts at a factory. People think the scariest part is the machines, the noise, the accidents, the possibility of getting hurt. But they're wrong. The scariest part is the silence. When the machines stop, when the building feels too empty, and when you realize you're not alone, even though you're supposed to be. This happened about 2 years ago, but I still think about it all the time. I was in my early 20s, broke and desperate for work. A friend got me a job at a small manufacturing plant on the edge of town. It wasn't huge. 3 long assembly floors, a break room, and a handful of offices upstairs. The night shift was simple. Keep the machines running, do inspections, log everything. There were usually 6 of us working together. By 10 p.m., management left, and it was just us until 6 a.m. The building always felt different at night. Echoes carried too far. The hum of the machines masked other noises, and the shadows seemed darker than they should have been. The first couple of weeks were uneventful. Then little things started happening. One night during a routine inspection, I noticed a machine was on even though no one was using it. The conveyor belt spun slowly, gears rattling, but the switch was in the off position. I asked around, but no one admitted touching it. We brushed it off. Glitch in the wiring. Another time, I came back from the bathroom and found one of the heavy safety doors open. Those things didn't just swing open on their own. They required effort. Still, I told myself maybe someone forgot to close it. That week, we got a new worker, Victor. He was quiet, mid-30s, tall, wiry. Always wore an old baseball cap pulled low. He didn't talk much, just nodded when spoken to. At first, I thought he was just shy, but there was something about him that made me uneasy. The way he lingered. The way he stood too still, like he was waiting for something. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the machines. Or at us. One night, I walked past the break room and saw him sitting alone at the table. No food, no phone. Just sitting in the dark, facing the wall. Around midnight, one of my coworkers, Eric, went to do his usual round on the second floor. 30 minutes passed. He didn't come back. We radioed him, no response. I volunteered to check. When I got upstairs, the floor was empty. His clipboard was on the ground near machine 12, but there was no sign of him. I searched the bathrooms, the storage rooms, even the stairwells. Nothing. I told the others. We all spread out, calling his name. Still nothing. Then an hour later, Eric walked back into the break room like nothing happened. When we asked where he'd been, he just shrugged and said, "Went for some air." But the side doors had alarms. None had gone off. He wouldn't explain. He wouldn't even look at us. After that night, things escalated. Sometimes machines would power on by themselves. Safety lights blinked when they weren't supposed to. I once found a pressure gauge climbing dangerously high, but when I checked the line, it wasn't even connected. What unsettled me most was how Victor seemed unfazed. When alarms buzzed, the rest of us jumped. He never flinched. He'd just stand there watching like he was expecting it. One night, I decided to check the security cameras. We didn't usually bother. It was a small place and the cameras mostly recorded empty hallways. At around 2:01 a.m., I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the feed from the second floor, I saw Victor. He wasn't working. He was standing perfectly still in the hallway, facing a locked storage room. He stood there for 20 minutes without moving. Then, without warning, the storage room door opened on its own. Victor walked inside, but here's the thing, when I ran upstairs to check, the storage room was empty, and the cameras showed no one coming back out. Yet 5 minutes later, Victor walked past me on the first floor, calm as ever. After that, I couldn't focus. Every creak in the building made me jump. Every time I looked up, I half expected to see Victor watching me. The others felt it too. One by one, people started calling out sick. Shifts got shorter. Some nights it was just me, Victor, and one other worker. And then one night, I found myself completely alone with him. It was around 1 a.m. My partner for the night, Sarah, said she was going for a smoke. She never came back. When I checked the cameras, she was nowhere in the building. Her bag was still in the locker room. I tried calling her cell. No answer. I turned back to the monitors and there was Victor, standing in the center of the assembly floor, staring up at the camera. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then the feed cut to static. I locked myself in the office. For hours, I listened to the machines clattering on and off, alarms chirping, doors slamming in the distance. Every time I checked the hallway through the little office window, I expected to see him standing there. At 4 a.m., the lights in the office flickered out. The computer screens went dark. In the silence, I heard footsteps outside the door. Slow, deliberate. They stopped right outside. And then, nothing. I stayed frozen in that chair until the first rays of daylight came through the blinds. When the morning shift arrived, I rushed out of the office. The factory looked normal. Machines off. Floors clean. Sarah never came back. Management claimed she quit without notice, but that wasn't like her. Her things were still in her locker. A week later, I quit too. I didn't even bother picking up my last paycheck. Sometimes I checked the local news, half expecting to see something about that factory. A fire, a collapse, missing workers finally found. But there's never anything. The plant is still running, still hiring. And sometimes I wonder, if you walked in tonight for your first shift, would Victor be waiting? My name is Claire. I'm 23 years old, and until last month, I worked the night shift at a roadside diner just outside Willow Creek. It was one of those places truckers stopped at for cheap coffee. Locals came to after midnight when they couldn't sleep, and the occasional stranger wandered into, because nothing else in town stayed open past 10. I thought it was an easy job, quiet, predictable, was wrong. The things I saw during those nights, what happened in that diner, still haunt me. Even now, after I've quit, I wake up some nights with the smell of stale coffee and grease stuck in my throat, hearing the bell over the door echo in my ears. But I need to get this out. I need someone to know, because what happened to me wasn't just bad luck or creepy customers, it was worse, much worse. When I first started at Willow's Diner, the manager, a gruff old man named George, gave me the same advice he gave every new hire. Don't bother cleaning the corner booth after 2 a.m. If somebody sits there, just serve them quick and move on. I thought he was joking. The booth he pointed to was tucked all the way in the back, half hidden in shadows where the overhead bulb flickered. It looked normal enough. Red vinyl seats, scratched tabletop, blinds that never fully closed. Mike, why? I asked, trying to sound casual. George just shrugged. Some customers prefer it. That's all. But his eyes lingered on me a second too long, like he was warning me without words. The first few weeks, nothing happened. Nights blurred together. Me wiping down counters, refilling coffee cups, pretending to study between orders. It was dull, lonely. Until one night I noticed the booth. At 2:17 a.m. sharp, the bell over the door chimed, but when I looked up, no one was there. I frowned, checked the lot through the window, and still empty. But when I turned back around, there was a half-empty cup of black coffee sitting in the back booth. Steam still rose from it. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the coffee out, to walk away, to pretend it wasn't there. But curiosity clawed harder. I forced myself to walk over, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the buzzing lights above. The booth was empty. The seat cushions looked undisturbed, yet the mug was definitely real. Hot. I looked around the diner, but there was no one else. No footsteps. No sound except the hum of the fridge behind the counter. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. Something about that silence was heavier than usual, like the air itself was listening. Finally, I reached for the cup, intending to take it back to the sink. But when I touched it, it was ice cold. My stomach twisted. I dropped the mug and it shattered, coffee splattering across the linoleum. That was the first night. After that, I noticed the booth wasn't always empty. Sometimes around 2 or 3 a.m., a man would sit there. Tall, thin, pale, always wearing the same gray jacket. His face oddly blurry in my memory. He never ordered. He just sat, hands folded, eyes fixed on me like he was waiting. The first time I approached him, notebook in hand, he looked up and said quietly, "You shouldn't be here." Then he vanished. I don't mean he got up and left. 1 second he was sitting there, lips pressed in a thin line. The next, the booth was empty, the blind swaying slightly as if disturbed. I backed away, gripping my order pad so tightly the spiral cut into my palm. Not every strange customer was a ghost. Some were worse. It was late, a rainy Thursday. A trucker came in soaking wet, his beard dripping on the floor. He sat in the cursed booth before I could say anything. "Coffee. Black," he grunted. I didn't want to approach that booth, but George's voice rang in my head. "Serve them quick and move on." So I did. But as I set the mug down, I noticed his hands were trembling. Not from cold, from adrenaline. His nails dug into the vinyl like claws. He leaned closer. "You've seen them too, haven't you?" My throat went dry. "Who?" His eyes darted around the empty diner. "The ones that sit with you? The ones that don't leave." I forced a nervous laugh. "Sir, I think you've had a long drive." But he slammed his fist on the table. "Don't play dumb. They follow you home, you know. They never stop once they pick you." My stomach flipped. I wanted to walk away, but my legs felt rooted. He leaned back, suddenly calm, sipping his coffee. "You'll see. They'll let you know when your shift's up." When I returned with his check 5 minutes later, the booth was empty, but the coffee mug was still steaming. After that, things escalated fast. Shadows followed me home. The TV turned on by itself at 3 a.m. My reflection lagged in mirrors, but the diner was worse. On my last shift, every booth was filled. Men in gray jackets, women with dripping hair, faceless children giggling softly, all of them staring at me. When I tried to run, the door wouldn't budge. My keys bent in the lock. My phone screen cracked down the middle. And then, the humming started again. I screamed through plates, anything to drown it out, but they just kept smiling, whispering my name in perfect harmony. "Claire, Claire, Claire." I don't remember much after that. When I woke, it was dawn. The diner was spotless. No broken dishes, no customers, just me lying in the corner booth. The cursed booth. I quit that morning, packed my things and left town without telling George, but leaving hasn't helped. Some nights, when the world goes still, I hear the bell of the diner door chime, and when I pass mirrors or glance into dark windows, I swear I see them, sitting, waiting, smiling. Okay, so I never thought a hospital could feel this empty. You hear the machines beeping, the distant echo of nurses' shoes on tile, the occasional groan from patients, but at 2 a.m., it's a different world, one where silence stretches long enough to make you feel like it's pressing against your ears. I'm 23, recently graduated, and working my first overnight shift as a hospital receptionist at St. Mercy's. The day staff left at 11 p.m., and I stayed behind to handle admissions phone calls and whatever paperwork trickled in from the ER. At first, the shift was uneventful. I checked patient files, logged vitals, and answered a few late-night phone calls. The hallways were lit dimly, mostly by emergency exit signs and the occasional nightlight in patient rooms. I liked the calm. It let me focus. Around 12:30 a.m., I heard it. A knock at the front desk. Soft, hesitant. I frowned. Visitors weren't allowed after 11 p.m. I glanced at the security camera, and there was a man standing in the lobby, tall, wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap pulled low. His hands were in his pockets. He didn't look sick, didn't carry anything. Just stood there, and I hesitated. "St. Mercy's, how can I help you?" No answer. Just the faint shuffle of his shoes. I pressed the intercom button. "Sir, the hospital is closed for visitors," he finally spoke. "I just need to see someone." "Who?" I asked, uneasy. He didn't answer. He just stepped inside as though the doors had unlocked themselves. I felt a chill. I wasn't supposed to let anyone in, yet here he was. "Sir, please wait at the lobby," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He ignored me, walking slowly toward the elevators. I noticed how he looked at the patient rooms as he passed, eyes lingering on each door, sometimes tilting his head as if listening. I reached for the security phone. "Security code 1, I whispered, barely audible. No one picked up. Probably already on a different floor. I followed him at a distance. He paused by the first-floor ICU, staring at the machines through the glass. The monitors blinked steadily, and for a second I thought he was going to touch one. I held my breath. Then he turned and vanished down the hallway. I ran back to the front desk and checked the visitor log. No entries for him, none, no name, no ID, nothing. My stomach churned. I tried to tell myself maybe he was a lost family member, but the way he moved, careful, deliberate, almost predatory, didn't feel right. Around 1 a.m., I was checking patient charts when I noticed a figure outside the nurse's station. He was standing there, half in shadow. I froze. "You're in a restricted area," I said, forcing my voice firm. He tilted his head. "Just curious," he said softly. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. "Security is on the way." He didn't flinch. Didn't move. Just studied me as though I were a specimen under a microscope. For the next hour, he wandered the hospital quietly, never speaking, never touching, but always appearing just when I looked away. At one point, I checked the cameras and he was on every floor at once, or maybe it just felt that way. I saw him in the ER hallway, the stairwell near the pharmacy. Then in the lobby, then gone. I called the police. They asked for a description. "Tall man, dark coat, baseball cap," I whispered. "No ID, no luggage, no visible weapons. They promised to send someone." Meanwhile, he appeared again, leaning against the counter near the nurse's station. "You always work nights?" he asked. "Yes," I said, trying not to shake. "Mostly." I noticed. "It's comforting in a way." I forced a laugh. "I hope you find it comforting somewhere else." He smiled faintly, a chilling curve of his lips. Then he moved toward the elevators again, disappearing down the hall. At 3 a.m., I realized I hadn't heard him breathing. Not once. The hospital has air vents. The sound should have carried. But it was as if he existed outside the natural laws of this place. I checked the patient monitoring system obsessively. All normal. No alerts, no signs of intrusion. But I knew he had been near the ICU. He had to have been. I called the floor nurse, Susan, hoping she could check the hallways. She said she was busy with a patient but promised to glance around. When she returned 10 minutes later, she shook her head. "No one here. All clear." I didn't tell her about the man in the lobby or the stairwell or the pharmacy. She would think I was losing it. By 4 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I stayed behind the front desk, pretending to type on the computer, heart racing. Then I saw him, or thought I did, outside the reception window, staring in. Hands pressed against the glass, head tilted. I jumped. The door was locked. The lobby empty. No footprints. Nothing. I called the police again. They said officers were en route, but it would take 15 minutes. 15 minutes of waiting, staring at a lobby that could have held a man who might not exist in the first place. When the officers arrived, they found no one. No ID, no footprints, no evidence of a break-in. My description matched no one in the area. They suggested I stay home the next night, get some rest. I agreed. But when I arrived for my next shift, I found a small notebook on the counter. Nothing else. Just the notebook. Inside, every page was filled with scribbled notes about the hospital. Patient schedules, staff names, my name written repeatedly. Descriptions of the hallways, the elevators, the nurse stations. One page had the words, "She notices." I quit the hospital that week. I never returned. Even now, months later, I sometimes dream of the empty halls. The soft shuffle of shoes, the faint whisper of a voice that isn't there. And I wonder if he's still there, waiting for the night shift, waiting for someone who notices.